if you're comparing yourself to other people at the gym, I think that's another thing. If you come in and you try a class, or maybe you're training for a month and you think, oh, I should be way better by now, and everyone's just kicking my ass. Well, take a step back and realize these people also train, and jujitsu works.
Just to start off, I'm speaking today with Jason from Jiu Jitsu Five-0. So, real pleasure to talk to you today. Thanks for joining me on the Small Man of the Law podcast. Much
Yeah.
appreciated. And I've been following you for a long time, since I got into law enforcement and since I got into Jiu Jitsu. And you're kind of, I see you as kind of one of the pioneers doing this. You've been doing this for a real long time, and kind of one of the first people out there doing it. And so really got a lot of respect for, what you do and what you've been doing. And if you guys don't know me, I'm currently now a police officer in Chicago. I work patrol, still active police. I started in corrections. I did 4 years in corrections, and now I've been in patrol for 8 years. So still working the street, and still like what I do. But when I started in corrections, I kind of realized, I needed to kind of do some kind of supplemental training. I was already 35 years old. I figured I was in pretty good shape, but I had really no concept of, how to defend myself or how to fight. I thought I did until I, took my first jiu-jitsu class and went, I have no idea what I'm doing. And, took off from there. I've been training at Brazil 021 Chicago for over 10 years. I'm a brown belt right now, three-stripe brown belt, and really love training over there. I'm under Andre Trencio, Hanet Stack, two fantastic people, two great professors, really support law enforcement, really support people bettering themselves through jiu-jitsu, and got a really great program over there. So a little bit about myself for the viewers that don't know me. And Jason, obviously you started Jiu-Jitsu Five-0. And I know you were a police officer for 11 years, just kind of recently retired and doing the jiu-jitsu full time, which is good. And just a little bit of the backstory, because I kind of know some of your newer stuff, but which came first? Was it the police or jiu-jitsu, and kind of that timing? And I know you have a little bit of boxing history too.
Yeah, man. Well, thanks for the background too. That's good to learn a little bit more about you and like, how long you've been training and stuff.
Yeah.
You're like part of a very small percentage, especially at brown belt, of cops that even train. But to be a brown belt, that's a big accomplishment. So
I appreciate that. Thank
that's
you.
great to hear, man. Yeah, like timing wise for me, I started training about a year after I became a cop. So I started policing in 2010. I started August 2010, and I
Okay.
think I started training jujitsu in like April of 2011. And I did it for all the reasons that you talked about. I started policing at the time. I was big into like lifting. I was doing a lot of like powerlifting and running, and I was in really good shape, but I kind of had to be honest with myself in terms of the fact that I didn't know how to fight. Got into a couple scraps, on the street trying to make arrests, and realized like I have no idea what I'm doing. And I'm also not a very big person. I'm about 5'7", 170 pounds. And so most of the people that I'm dealing with on the street, were a lot bigger and stronger than me. And I knew if I ever were by myself or even with a partner and I had to like, try to control somebody that's bigger and stronger than me, I needed to know what I was doing. So yeah, man, I walked into a gym. I ended up finding a gym that was really close to the house where I lived at the time. I still train at the same gym, have been for the last 12 years or so. But I went in, I met the owner, Damien, my instructor, and turns out there was like a ton of cops. When I walked in, there was actually like a framed picture of a bunch of different police patches from different agencies in the area.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
So I knew it was obviously, the place to be, had a lot of support for the cops, and I met Damien, and the rest was kind of history. I think I signed up for like the free trial class that day. I went and I did a class. I fell in love with it, and I never stopped training. So I'm a black belt now, been training again since April of 2011.
Yeah.
Uh,
Congratulations on the black belt. That's great.
Thank you. Yeah, it's this December will actually be 3 years, so I'll get my first degree here, which is kind of crazy how fast it all goes by.
I know.
when I started, I looked at black belts like this unachievable goal that just seemed like it was so it would take so long to get it. And then you
Mm.
just kind of keep showing up and you keep going to class, and before you know it, like it all 10, 11 years go by pretty quick.
No, I agree. And I started at 35. I started in corrections in 2011, so we're kind of right around the same time frame. And
Yeah.
I had the same thing. I had some incidents at the jail, some some small scraps, and the guys that worked there, I think they were training out in the suburbs at the time at I think Gracie Baja, and
Okay.
they were like, "Oh, do you train?" And I was like, "Well, I work out a little bit, and do some stuff." They're like, "No, you need to find a jiu-jitsu gym and go train."
Yeah.
And I did, and that kind of took off from there.
Yeah,
And
for
like you
sure.
said, you just keep showing up to class, and the belts take care of themselves. I never even thought about getting a brown belt or a black
Yeah.
belt. I was just showing up to be able to survive an encounter on the street, and I wanted to get better at it, and kind of fell in love with jujitsu through the process.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure. I tell cops that all the time too, is like you don't have to worry about belt rank. Don't
right.
train for belts, train
Yeah,
for skills, and the other thing with like the whole lifting weights and doing all the other stuff, you can still do all of those things. Like I still lift weights, I still run,
sure.
I get on the Peloton, I try to do yoga every day, but I also try to make a point to train jujitsu at least 3 days a week. If I can do more, great. I'm 43 years old, so my body
Hmm.
doesn't always like it when I train more than 3 days a week. I found that's kind of my sweet spot to keep my skills fresh, learn new stuff, and get a good workout in. But I hear from a lot of guys that are, big into weightlifting or big into CrossFit or whatever it is, like they think that they have to quit those things to add jujitsu to the mix. And you could add 1 day a week and be so far ahead
Right.
of almost everybody else on the street and your partners and just by training 1 day a week and focusing on specific things. So you don't have to try to get a black belt. You don't have to, make it your entire life. I think you should dedicate your life to it because there's so many other benefits aside from just learning how to fight. But um, it's one of those things like I think guys get hung up on the belt ranks and
Mhm.
how many days a week they should be training, and they feel like they have to be there 5 days a week to get better. And I just don't think that's necessarily the case.
No, I agree. And, I understand people have, family and kids and other obligations. And, I tell people, even if you're, I'm kind of crazy into it. I train on my days off. I do private lessons with Andre and that, because, that's what I want to do. And I'm trying to better my game. But, I tell most people, even if you don't do the law enforcement aspect, if you just sign up for a fundamental jujitsu class at a good reputable school, like
Mhm.
Alliance, and they're going to run you through everything. And if you commit to 1 year, 2 nights a week, 2 days a week, you're going to be a different person, and you're going to look at your use of force and how you handle situations on the streets much differently. Because I
Sure.
guarantee your 1 year at Alliance in a fundamental program, you're going to change, a police officer's, you know, um,
Yeah.
outlook on things, and you don't have to worry about anything. All you got to do is show up, and you've kind of got the system down.
Yeah. Yep. That's very accurate. I actually run a free class at my gym every Friday at 11 o'clock. No strings attached. It's open to any cop who wants to come in and train. And I have kind of a core group
Mm,
of people that consistently come pretty much every Friday.
yeah,
And I've watched them go from not knowing anything to like dominating people that will come in, and females as well. Like there's a few females in my class that there'll be new guys that come in to try the class and we'll do like some positional training. And those females who have been consistently coming to my class, they'll own the guys. They'll be on their
yeah,
back, choking them like they
mhm,
and just based on the basic stuff that we work, like you said, fundamental basic jujitsu, but done consistently over a long period of time, only coming to class 1 day a week. They weren't training anywhere else or doing
sure.
anything outside of that 1 day a week. And it's always fun to watch the progression, with the cops that come to that class and just be able to see them, um, be able to handle themselves against people that are bigger and stronger and maybe even a little bit more athletic, just
Yeah,
through using fundamental jujitsu. So it's also a testament to just, how well the art works and how well it aligns with what you guys do on the street every day when you're dealing with uncooperative people, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree because everyone says, they always talk about the best martial art and stuff, and there's a ton of great martial arts.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of the Muay Thai, boxing's fantastic, but since I'm in law enforcement, I decided jiu-jitsu had, kind of the best aspects,
Yeah.
for controlling a resisting subject and to try
Yep.
and take them into custody with as minimal damage to myself, minimal damage to the suspect. And striking is good, but striking to gain compliance and get someone into handcuffs isn't really, ideal. There's a time and place for striking, but
Right.
if you could physically control someone, through some, leverage and techniques, it's much better. So I found that it does really gel well with law enforcement. Yeah, absolutely.
For sure. Yeah. And, striking, like you said earlier, I do have a boxing background. I boxed for many years and I loved it. Boxing is great. Striking is fun, great workout. I think it's a really good thing for self-defense. If someone is attacking you, it's good to know how to throw strikes. It's good to know what it feels like to have strikes and punches thrown at you. But from the control standpoint, if you look at almost all incidents that you deal with on the street, are usually pretty basic common scenarios of you go to place someone on arrest, they become uncooperative, and now you're wrestling with the person.
Absolutely.
They're
Yeah.
not always trying to attack you. They're not always pulling out a knife or a gun or a hand grenade. Like
Mhm.
that stuff, you got to train for that stuff too. But I would say, at least in, love to hear your opinion on, but like in my experience, I would probably say 98% of the incidents that I've been involved in over the course of my career where we're making an arrest, it was a grappling match essentially at the end of the day. They weren't trying to attack me. They were just trying to get away. They didn't want to get into handcuffs, and we had to figure out a way to control them either by ourselves or in a team setting.
Mhm.
Do we deal with people with weapons? Absolutely. Do we deal with people that want to attack you and punch you and kick you and all? Yes, we do. But I always say, like, let's start with what is the most common thing that we deal with on a regular weekly basis.
Right.
If we don't know how to do a takedown, let's not worry about all that other stuff just yet. Like, let's start here and then we can build on it.
Right.
So I'm very big on that. I talk about, when I put on classes and stuff, kind of taking a crawl, walk, run approach to training.
Mhm.
If you don't know how to crawl, you're not going to know how to run full sprints, right?
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
and most cops, when it comes to grappling and fighting in general, they don't know how to crawl yet because they've never done it.
Mhm.
So it's good to be introduced to the fundamental stuff like you talked about before, just basic, control positions, basic takedowns from common positions that you find yourself in when you start grappling with somebody on the street, and just understanding what it's like to take someone to the ground, establish a dominant position, keep them under control, and get them into handcuffs. And then once you become proficient at that, I think you learn a lot of that other stuff sort of by proxy, like the weapon retention stuff. Like, you're a brown belt, right?
Mhm.
2-on-1 arm control. You know how to create angles. You know how to create frames. You know how to, body positioning and body mechanics and leverage and base. And
Right.
all of those principles and concepts tie into weapon retention. It ties into if someone's trying to punch you in the face or put you in a headlock. Like, you learn a lot of that other stuff just through training.
Right.
I don't know if that gets talked about enough. Um, so that's something I believe in. It's my own personal philosophy.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I'm right. But I'm just, that's something I feel like I've learned through, my experience on the mats and just grappling in general.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And, we have a Friday night class here. It's just all law enforcement officers, and we just go over the basics. They come in, I teach them how to break fall, stand up,
Yep.
framing, all the basics. We work them through just like they were a new student in a fundamental class because you need to have that basic foundation before you can move anywhere.
Right.
And
Right.
like you said before, I'd say 99% of my use of force incidents on the street have been a grappling match. I had one incident, where there was somebody trying to actively punch me, but those are rare. It's usually a grappling match and they're usually ugly and,
Yep.
flailing and all that stuff. But what the nice thing about jujitsu is you don't have to think about all the complicated aspects.
Right.
because when you train on a consistent basis, you're kind of problem solving on the mats. You're getting in bad positions, how to work out of that. You're doing all that stuff, in a safe environment where, you can kind of problem solve and work your way through that. And kind of all those kind of complicated situations kind of end up arising on the mats, and you kind of work through that stuff. So when it does happen on the street, it's not this panic mode of, oh, what do I do? It's just you start moving like you should and get to a better position and do what you need to do. And
Yeah.
that's one of the great things about jiu-jitsu, where it can just become automatic
Yep.
when you've trained for a while, and you kind of know what to do, just
Right.
consistently training over and over. Yeah. So yeah, very
Yeah.
good point.
Yeah. Well, and in those self-defense situations too, I feel like, and even coming from a boxing background, you understand how to close the distance, like
Right.
distance management, right? That's really important. And once you can do that, if someone who's, especially if they're not trained and they're trying to throw punches at you, they
Right.
don't know what they're doing. They're not going to be very effective. If you can close the distance and wrap them up in a clinch and take them to the
Hmm.
ground, the fight's pretty much over,
Yeah.
when you know what you're doing.
And
So
that's exactly how I was trained. Kind of Andre and Hinek come from that old school Gracie, Helio Gracie line. And it
yeah,
was keep the distance, minimize the strikes and close the distance, take it to the ground. So,
yeah, yeah,
and it works, so because I'm not a
absolutely.
striker. So I just need to defend enough to get inside and get a hold of you, and then
Yeah.
take it to the ground. And those concepts still work.
Exactly. Well, and to your earlier point too, like going back to the striking thing, like striking is not a good control tactic. Like if you're trying to
Hmm.
control someone, especially on the street where you have use of force laws and departmental policies and you have
Hmm.
body cameras and you have everybody in the world filming you at all times on their cell phones anytime you're dealing with someone on the street, even if it's like you're just talking to someone, there's always someone that feels like
Sure.
standing there recording it, right?
Oh, you're going to be on camera somewhere.
Yeah. And so like someone's not cooperating and they're not being aggressive in terms of like attacking you,
Yeah.
punching
Hmm.
them into submission. It's just not a good, it's not a
No.
good control measure. And it just escalates the situation. There's a lot of potential for unnecessary injuries to both you and the suspect. There's so many different aspects and things that can arise out of that. But you hear that all the time, like, oh, I'll just punch him or we'll just, I'll use strikes. Okay, what
Right.
does that mean? Right. Like, especially
Exactly. Right.
it's just like jujitsu. If you don't train how to strike, you're not going to know how to do it effectively.
Right.
Like,
And so you break your hand, and then what happens? Right.
exactly. Yeah.
Hmm.
Like any art, or any skill, it has to be trained to become proficient in it. And that's kind of another topic. Probably we could go
Yeah,
in the rabbit
exactly.
hole
We
we
could talk
could go
about that
down, but
forever. But you
uh,
talked about, like, you see taser incidents and baton incidents, but guess what? That only maybe gains a few seconds of compliance. You still have to go hands on, put them in
yeah,
a proper position, and get handcuffs on, no matter
yeah,
what. So
yeah.
you still need to physically control somebody, in one way or the other.
Yeah,
So,
what with
oh,
those
go ahead.
tools too, with the baton specifically, like I clown on the baton a lot on my social media pages, and
Yeah,
I know there's guys that like the baton, that carry it, that believe in it. That's great, good for them. I think the industry as a whole, if you were to take a poll, I think most cops think that the baton is complete trash,
yeah, I agree.
and a useless tool. It's old school. I don't
Hmm.
know that it was even a good option when it came out.
No,
It's like any tool. I think maybe the idea of it was there, but the execution of it, it just doesn't really have any value, in my opinion. One of my favorite questions to ask classes when I teach is just get a show of hands. How many of you have ever used your baton to effect an arrest?
right.
Usually there's zero hands that go up. Sometimes there might be a guy or gal that says, yeah, I used it one time,
Mhm.
it kind of worked, but we ended up having to use something else anyway. And so I don't understand why that's even still a thing that
Right.
we have.
Yeah. And it might even be worse because now you have something in your hand and you're maybe introducing a weapon to the subject that could be a problem too. So
100%. Yeah.
yeah. So
Yep.
yeah, definitely agree with that. So just to switch gears a little bit, talk more about kind of your big stuff. You have online training. That's kind of your niche right now. Um, You're on YouTube, Instagram. You also have the Jiu-Jitsu Five-0 app, which I'd kind of like to talk about. And just briefly, Jason created the control and defend instructional based off his Jiu-Jitsu Five-0 fight philosophy, which is take your opponent to the ground, establish dominant position. And number three is a huge one that I see all the time. There's a huge problem in police use of force and trying to control a subject, control them, then handcuff them. That's huge, huge. So I'm
Yeah.
so glad you put that in there in that control and defend instructional. So could you talk a little bit more about the app? Like if just a general officer wanted to like come on, sign on to control and defend, kind of the basics of what that's about.
Yeah, so I started like the online training stuff as part of the core part of my business. That's actually like why I started Jiu Jitsu Five-0. I knew there were a lot of barriers to entry for training, right? Like time, money, not knowing what to train, not having access to a gym. There's a lot of different things that can get in the way for cops that do want to learn tactics for the street and maybe do want to train. So I really wanted to make high quality jujitsu training readily accessible to cops all over the country, which is why I started doing all of the online stuff that I'm doing. When I started, there wasn't really a lot of it online. Most of it's in person, which is great. You do have to train with partners and practice things, but there are still a lot of things that you can do and learn by watching videos, by grabbing a partner at the PD and just drilling specific, techniques. There's a lot of things you can do there. So what I did was I created some different online trainings. I have some instructionals out for those guys that train, like you've heard of BJJ Fanatics. There's a lot of like
Sure.
jujitsu instructionals, but there weren't a lot of like police jujitsu instructionals. So I started doing those. I have my control and defend series, and I have a vehicle extraction series, which you can buy on my website. And then the Jiu-Jitsu Five-0 app was another thing that I launched back in 2021, the first version of it. Again, just trying to make high quality training readily accessible. First version was, I would say, a success. I've got quite a few members that subscribe to it as a subscription-based training app available for both Apple and Android devices. And members of that, they get access to all my instructionals. So any instructionals that I've created and all the future instructionals that I will create will all be located in the app. They also get access to different technique video series. Any seminar I do, I film it, I put it in the app. Some of the classes that I teach around the country, those are recorded, and all of the techniques from within that class are in the app. I do my weekly class that I teach back here. We record that, and that's put in the app. So if guys want to follow along with our classes every week, they can. And then there's other training content that's built into it as well. I've got some mobility stuff, some grappling-based workouts. I've got solo drills, grappling dummy drills. So really
Yeah.
anything that you need to learn on demand and on the go, you can get that through my app. I do have like the latest version of it is launching here pretty soon. It's slated to be done hopefully by the end of this month. It was supposed to be done a little bit earlier, but we ran into, how technology works.
Mhm.
There's some bugs and stuff that we had to work through, but I'm really, really excited for this second version because there's going to have some new features and functionality, some different price points to make it affordable for everybody. And I'm really excited to launch it. Whole new design. I've got some personal coaching built into it, so if people want to work with me directly, they can. And yeah, yeah, really looking forward to that. So I'll probably be putting something out here within the next few weeks when it's ready to go, and you'll be seeing a lot more of that. But I'm hoping that people find a lot of value in it. I think they will. But yeah, that's there for them.
No, that's great. Yeah, because I've seen a lot of your stuff. Your content is always very good, always well done,
Thank you.
and yeah, you're always putting out good stuff. And I would
I
always
appreciate
recommend
it.
somebody checking out Jiu-Jitsu Five-0. Your stuff is always been good. And in some of those things, because I just saw like some of your concepts, for better police control were leverage, base and balance, grip and grip fighting, and then the control before handcuffing. So I think, you cover, a lot of those, just fundamentals in there too, which is great,
Yep.
and you start
Yep.
them off kind of from the beginning and work them through. I always like your takedowns. Are always very good. I still
Thank
have,
you.
I'm still kind of letting go of the grip before you hit the ground. That's still like one of my things that I probably don't do so well and I'm
Yeah.
still working on.
Yep.
But very good for law enforcement because, you don't want to get stuck underneath somebody and you don't want to, screw up your hands on the sidewalk and stuff like that. So I saw
Yep.
some of your stuff where you were showing that, and it's, just very good stuff, very practical. So
Thank you. Yeah, I
yeah,
work hard to put out, good content. I'm very thoughtful about the stuff that I do put out. I don't ever want to put something out just because I think it looks cool for Instagram or it's going to get some likes. If I put something out, it's because I think it has value. Now, it's not to say we don't like put out some joke content or put out some sport jujitsu stuff from time to time.
sure.
I don't do a lot of the sports stuff, but I am, I do think jujitsu is fun and it doesn't always have to be about life and death and
Right.
street content, right? So I really want to expose cops to jujitsu more than anything. Like I don't do the 40-hour instructor courses. It's something I decided that if an agency wants to work with me, I do have an agency program. But it's a direct partnership and I have a lot more built into that than
Mm.
just a 40-hour paper certificate class. I
Yeah,
think
where
those,
you would just do a week and go away. Right.
right. Yep. I think
Yeah.
those are necessary. I understand why we have those around the country and that's been the model for a long time. But I'm about consistent training,
Hmm.
because you can't get good at something by training it 5 days,
No.
once every 3 years. That it's just not, especially if you're charged with teaching those skills to other people that can have life and death
Sure.
consequences. 5 days of training is not enough. It's a great introduction, but it needs to be consistent, especially if you're an instructor. So my whole thing is like, I I wanted, not only bring high quality jujitsu training to cops, but also just expose them to jujitsu and like teach them about the art, show them the art, see not only why is it effective for the street, but like how can it help improve your quality of life? How can it improve your
Yeah.
physical fitness? How can it improve your mental health? All of those things that you obviously are brown belt, like you've experienced all of these things through jujitsu, I'm sure. Um, I love that aspect of jujitsu as well. And I don't think it gets talked about enough in like the police world. We focus a lot on like techniques and like certifications and all of this, but like no one's talking about the lifestyle, like living the jujitsu lifestyle. And I know it's a huge part of my life. It has benefited me, you know, infinitely. And I think I want to help cops understand those benefits of jujitsu as well, far beyond just like techniques, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. I agree. And our slogan at Brazil 021 and theirs is beyond martial arts, it's a lifestyle. And it really is. And I've talked about a little bit of, I always say like, it helps physically and in the mental health aspect. And my wife always says, well, explain the mental health aspect. And I was like, well, it's really hard to explain, but I
Yeah.
know when I go to a jujitsu class, I feel a lot better. I
Yep.
leave there kind of clear headed. I feel better. I can forget about the day. I'm not thinking about that. Police officers were exposed to, critical incidents, traumatic incidents, and on top of, all the rest of the stuff going on in your life. And
Yeah.
I can't, I'm not a psychologist. I don't know exactly how it works, but I know when I go to jujitsu, I come home feeling better. The next day I feel better. It kind of clears that brain out of all the nonsense. And I know it's helped me, not only physically, but, mentally. I can't describe exactly how that works, but
Yeah.
it definitely works. And
Yep.
I've talked to other police officers that say the same thing. And I talk to just regular people that, work in other professions that say the same thing. They like, jujitsu is their therapy.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yep.
and it does work. So yeah.
You know, for me, the mental side of things, I think there's three parts to it. I think what you're saying is like the physical part where you're actually getting in a really good workout, which obviously raises your endorphins and helps with all of that stuff, right? Like it helps with depression, it helps with anxiety, it just puts you in a better mood. It's the same thing like when they talk about runner's high. Like I used to be a big runner. If you go for a long run and you come back, you feel great, right? So jiu-jitsu has that same effect, where you just feel really good after you get done with the hard workout. Second to that, I think, is you're in the moment. So it's almost like a form of meditation. Like when you're fighting with another person, and we can be fighting, I'm using that term loosely because it's,
Yeah.
you're grappling with your
Sure.
friends, but it's still, you're going hard and you're trying to defend yourself. You're trying to control this person. You can't think about anything else when you're doing that. If you're stuck in bottom side control, the only thing you can really think about is A, this sucks, and B, how do I get out of it?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Can't think about the crazy call that you went on that day or the sad shit that you saw last week. You're just only thinking about the moment. And I think over time, doing that consistently just has a positive impact on your brain, it carries over into other aspects of your life where it maybe keeps you a little calmer under stress. If you're dealing with problems in your personal life or something comes up, you're able to like approach those a little bit differently and react to them a little bit differently. And then third, I think when you go to the gym, you're surrounded by other people who are all positive,
Mm.
and everyone shares the same kind of goals. They want to get better at jujitsu. And my favorite part about jujitsu, honestly, is like when you get done training and you sit along the wall with your friends, whether those are other cops or whether it's, guys that work in the IT department at some company, like
Hmm.
there's people from all walks of life. You just have really good conversations. You just kick the shit out of each other for an hour, and now you're exhausted, and you sit along
Yeah.
the wall and like you tell stories and you have good conversation, and you just leave there feeling really positive because you become a product of your environment, right? And for a lot of cops, if your life is policing and you don't hang out with anyone else outside of the P like that aren't cops, and you work every overtime shift, like you become a product of your environment. And unfortunately, the policing environment is mostly negative because
Yeah.
we're not dealing with positive people.
Right. It's
Like
true.
every time we go to a call, it's not because something great just happened.
Right.
We're dealing with like bullshit all day, every day. And if you don't have an outlet to kind of help counterbalance that, it's really easy to get caught up in that negativity, and you just become this version of yourself that you probably aren't, if that makes sense, or that you probably weren't before you started policing. And
Sure.
it took me a little while to notice that. I've been out for a couple of years now, and the first year was like it was weird because I didn't know how to act. And I remember my wife and I jokingly one day, I was like, I feel really good today, but I can't really describe it. She's like, Jay, I think that's what most people would call like joy and
Right. Yeah. You're
happiness,
like,
right?
what is that?
And I was like, this is
Yeah.
weird.
What's this
And
weird feeling of
legitimately,
Yeah.
I hadn't
Yeah.
experienced that feeling. And it
Yeah.
took me like a while after being out. Um, but I did get those feelings, a lot of times like at class or when I would leave jujitsu class, like you said,
Sure.
you felt that high. And I think that helped me during the course of my career, just having that outlet. If I did have a really bad day at work or I dealt with some crazy calls or saw some things that I didn't want to see,
Yeah.
you can go to jujitsu, and it is almost like a form of therapy. I don't know that it's necessarily going to cure you,
Hmm.
depending on where you're at, but it definitely helps. And I'd recommend that, any cop thinking that they want to give it a try should definitely go try a class because, again, for all those reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. Cause and I kind of, you can't just think of like, well, I'm going to work my 20 years and then do all this other stuff in my life. You kind of have to
Right.
live your life now too, because,
Yeah,
that's not guaranteed. So I think you got to take advantage, while you can and get it in while you can. Cause
for sure.
those days aren't guaranteed. And,
Yep.
so, yeah. But you were talking about your 40-hour seminar, and I think you just did Madisonville Police Department. Were you just there for a 40-hour
It was a 3-day class.
or a
So,
3 day? Okay.
yeah, Madisonville Police Department, give a shout out to those guys. They're awesome. Their chief is a great guy. He trains, so
Oh, great.
he knows what's up. He's been training off and on, I think he said, for like 15 or 20 years. He's only a blue belt, but I don't know that his belt necessarily like represents his skill set.
Yeah, true. Right.
I trained with him at lunch. He's a giant dude, and so but yeah, he connected with me last summer. He's like, "Hey, I love your stuff. I'd really like to bring you down here." So I went down just a couple weeks ago and I put on a 3-day takedown and ground control class. We had a
Mm.
really good time. Their agency is definitely ahead of the curve. They're trying to really make some big changes in the industry, starting in their state. They're trying to make jiu-jitsu like a mandatory part of their training.
That's great.
And so yeah, it was a lot of fun. Really nice people down in Kentucky. We had a really good time. So I'm hoping to go back, at some point to put on another class down there.
Yeah, I definitely think overall, I think the culture is kind of slowly changing. More officers are getting into it. I think jiu-jitsu is becoming more mainstream. People still have that concept like it's a UFC cage fight, and that's not what
Yeah.
it is. And I've been training for over 10 years and I've never really been seriously injured. That's one of the main things, police say like, oh, I don't want to hurt my shoulder or hurt my knee. And, I started at, I'm 48 years old and I'm still, training 3, 4 nights a week. And, hey, you get
Yeah.
banged up a little bit, but,
Right.
I've never had, a serious injury, knock on wood, so it's, you can grapple and, not get injured. But I think even in Chicago, I think we're, it's a little early days here, but we're, because I don't want to talk about it just yet, but they're going to start to implement a program here in Chicago. They're going to start, it's jujitsu based, grappling based. It's a very good program. I just don't want to say the name of it just yet, just because it's not official.
Sure.
But once they announced that, I was like, oh man, this is fantastic. Like, I'm so happy that they're finally going to like put something in to teach new recruits and to have maybe some in-service for the current officers. And so it's something I really never thought I'd see in my career. And I
Yeah.
always thought, police had to kind of go find it on their own. But I really think that, kind of the, powers that be in police departments are really starting to see like if we want to see different use of force outcomes,
Yeah.
guess what? We have to train our officers in how to handle these and get these different outcomes. You can't just, magically say, hey, we want you guys to do this, thing without training you in this thing. So,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think they're kind of starting to connect the dots with that.
No, that's great. And yeah, I think for those cops that you're referring to too, like the guys that are hesitant about like trying anything, I think they have to stop looking at it as more defensive tactics training because it's not what it is.
Right.
And I can't blame them because defensive tactics training traditionally in policing has sucked, right? It's the worst.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's garbage training. People are voluntold to be there. They're being held hostage.
Hmm.
It's all just like a bunch of theoretical nonsense in my experience, and so
Yeah.
I think when they look at jujitsu and they hear guys like us be like, hey, you got to come try jujitsu, and
Hmm.
it's like, why would I want to go spend my own time and my own money on more defensive tactics training, which is
Right.
sucked, right?
Yeah.
But I think if they go try a class, they'll understand that that's not what it is.
Hmm.
uh, but if they're open to it and can believe us that it's not more defensive tactics training, I
Right.
think that would help out. That
Yeah.
would help out a lot too.
Yeah. And I've seen the change too, because, our professors always say like it's good they're coming to our gym. It's not the police environment. It's not the
Yeah,
training academy. It's not in-service training. So I mean, do you see that difference when, officers come into Alliance, your gym, and it's not the actual police academy. It's a different environment, different people. And
yeah,
I think, the culture is a little different. I think they're a little more open-minded to stuff.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, yep. I definitely see, especially the people that will come in and try a class for the first time. I think they immediately see like, oh, this is a lot different than what I thought it was going to be.
Hmm.
And like you said, to the culture, like I always try to keep my classes very lighthearted. We joke around a lot. We have
Yeah.
fun. We take training seriously, but it's not, this environment that a lot of cops are used to where you have some instructor up there, knife handing and talking about all this crazy
Right.
stuff, you
Yeah.
know, very deadpan.
Yeah.
We're jujitsu
Screaming
guys.
in your face. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Right.
we joke, we laugh, we have a good time, we
Hmm.
beat each other up, and then we go home and have a
Yeah.
great day after, you know?
Yeah. And it's interesting because I work for a a very big department, obviously,
Right.
and I started this class, and it's still kind of small, 8 to 10 people, but the change I've seen in these officers in a small amount of time, that for me is just been fantastic. And
Yeah.
usually, if I can get them in the door and just for a trial class, they make that connection on their own. They're like,
Right.
okay, I see this and the work I do every day, and they make that connection, and that's what gets them to come back. And
Yep.
so it's usually just that the hardest part for a police officer, I think, is getting in the door. We have more females coming in because I think they don't have as much of the ego issue as
Yep.
guys do. Guys as police officers, they know they're going to hit the jujitsu mats and probably be humbled a little bit, and that's difficult
Yeah.
for a lot of police officers, and just
Yep.
kind of the way I don't know we're set up, I guess. But that's part of the game. I've been training forever and for 10 years, and I lose on the mats all the time. It's just part of the
Yeah.
deal. There's always going to be somebody better than you, but that's why you keep training. It's not
Yep.
about the win or lose. It's you got to make it. What I like to say is you got to make it about yourself. If
Yep.
I'm a little better today than I was yesterday, fantastic. I'm
Right.
not going to be competing at ADCC, or go up against any of these people. It's a different level of jujitsu. My jujitsu is not at that level, but
Right.
it can be good enough to affect an arrest on the street and get me home to see my family if I do get in some crazy mess and got to get out of it. And that's
Yeah.
that's that's really what I see as the important part. So,
Yep. And you burn a ton of calories, improve your cardiovascular health and your
mhm.
conditioning and your mobility and like all of those things. I lose all the time. Like you said, I get tapped by lower belts. I don't care. I'm 43 years old.
Yeah.
Sometimes lower belts will catch me in something. Younger guys that I train with are 25-year-olds that wrestled in college and
Mhm.
don't run out of gas and are way stronger and more athletic than me. If they
Yeah.
tap me out, okay. I'm still gonna show up tomorrow. I'm gonna come back the next
Mhm.
day. I'm gonna keep training because it's good for me, and I think, yeah, if guys could maybe lower their expectations a little bit and just realize that we're not handing out any awards at the end of class for like the world's best fighter.
Mhm.
We're not going to post videos of you getting your ass kicked all over social media.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
we are training, we're practicing a for something else, Like you said, if you can affect an arrest on the street, that's the goal. And I
Mhm.
tell new guys that will come into my classes like, yeah, you're not going to be able to just smash everybody at the gym because there's a lot of guys that are bigger, stronger, more athletic, been training longer than you. You're never going to be able to do anything against them. But like, can I control and defend myself on the street against someone that has absolutely no training, that's bigger and stronger than me? I think I can.
Mhm.
I'm pretty confident in my abilities to be able to do that. So if you're comparing yourself to other people at the gym, I think that's another thing. If you come in and you try a class, or maybe you're training for a month and you think, oh, I should be way better by now, and everyone's just
Mhm.
kicking my ass. Well, take a step back and realize these people also train and jujitsu works. The thing that beats jujitsu is jujitsu.
Right.
And
Yeah, that should make that connection right there of going,
right.
this
Yeah.
works, so I should stay here. Exactly.
Yep. So
Yeah.
if you're getting your ass kicked, the guy probably has better jujitsu than you, and that's okay.
Right.
Keep training. You got to train with people that are better than you to get better. And that's the other thing with a lot of like traditional police defensive tactics training is number one, you never train it against a fully resisting opponent. So you
No,
don't
it's too
actually know.
static. Yeah, it's
It's
too
very
static. Yeah.
static. So who knows if it's actually going to work in
Hmm.
real life, and with jujitsu, you get that opportunity. You get to see exactly what works and what doesn't.
Yeah.
And a lot of things you think are going to work or things that you think you're going to do in your mind. If someone threw me on the ground, I would just stand up. if someone got me in mount, I would just bench press them off me. It's like that stuff is all great in theory
Right.
till it happens to you and you realize, oh, all those theories are now out the window and I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing. That can be a little scary,
Yeah.
but that's okay. Like that's the environment that you want those things to happen in so you can workshop it versus having it happen to you on the street and then be like, fuck, I don't know. I don't know how to get out of this headlock. I don't know how to get out of this bottom
Right.
position. Um, but yeah, I wish like people could realize that, but the ego thing does come up a lot. I think that's a huge part of it. You know, I had to swallow my own pride when I started training jujitsu and just realize
Sure.
like, hey, admit to myself, I'm not a good fighter. I might be strong on the bench press. Yeah, I can bench press 250 pounds or whatever I could do at the time. There's no way I could do that now. But that didn't make me a good fighter. It made me strong on the bench press,
Right.
right? Like
Yeah.
that's what. So having strength is good. Having being in good shape, that's great. You should be physically fit if you work the street, but you also need to have a skill set of grappling.
Yeah. 100% agree. And, it's funny because one of my favorite training partners, we've got some competition blue belts that are, late 20s, early 30s. And, the one guy I train with, he's maybe 6'2", like 260 or something. He's a monster,
Yeah,
but I don't see it as a problem. I love when I go against him because I know I'm going to get smashed and destroyed. So I can
yeah,
try all my stuff on him. Like if I can survive and not get caught under his side control, or
yeah,
at least, keep him at bay and I don't get tapped out, I'm like, hey, I won. I won
yeah.
that round,
Yep.
So I love
100%.
training against guys like that because it pressure tests me and it puts me, kind of to my limit because this is, kind of worst case scenario if you had to
Yep.
deal with somebody like that on the street, So
Yeah.
I like to kind of, to grapple with guys like that because, so I get smashed, big deal. But at least I'm, can feel that strength, can feel the power of somebody that big and roll with somebody like that in a safe environment. And, no, I'm not going to get, injured and that just, gets me more prepared for what I got to deal with. So I love going against guys like
Absolutely.
that. Yeah. So
Yeah, you have to. And I think that's a really good point. When we talk about like guys will come in and think they have to like win.
right.
To me, a win a lot of times is if I'm going with someone like that who's really strong, really athletic, has good jujitsu. Can I go the whole round and not get submitted? Can
Right.
I defend myself the entire round if they're on my back and I don't get submitted for a 5 minute round? Like that's a win to me because if that happened to you on the street and you're able to defend yourself without getting choked or getting your arm broken
Hmm.
or, even just maintaining a top position for an entire round. Maybe you don't submit the guy, but were
Yeah.
you on top of him for 5 minutes and he couldn't do anything? Like that's a
Yeah.
win.
That's a win. That's a win.
Um,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and I think that it comes into play even more so. Like you and I are over 40. As you get older, that's that might be your game. Your game might
Yeah.
just to hold somebody down and make their life very uncomfortable from the top. Maybe you're not catching a bunch of submissions, but you just have really good pressure and
Hmm.
people can't really do a lot against you. I think that again, that's a win for me. As I've gotten a little bit older and the longer I train, I've started to see more of that.
Yeah.
Uh, as to where maybe before when I was younger, I was always looking like for fancy submissions and what can I do from here? And now it's like, yeah, can I hold someone in side control
Yeah.
for 4 minutes? That's actually kind of fun to me because you can see them like strain and struggle and gas themselves out and try to
Hmm.
bench press you off of them. And like,
Right.
I think that's a skill and art in and of itself is just
Oh,
to
absolutely.
maintain a dominant position. So, you know, um, yeah, at the end of the day, I think you just have to go get on the mats, train, lose, win some, lose some, but just keep showing up. And over time, it all works out.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I totally agree. And before we wrap up, now that you're kind of, full-time Jiu-Jitsu 5-0, what's some of the stuff coming up in the future? Because I mean, is this, you're going to be doing this full time now and kind of putting all your time and energy in it? I know spending time with your wife and family too, obviously.
Yep.
But so yeah, if you could just tell us, for the person that, has never logged on or checked you out, just, how do we find you? How do we connect with you? And, and what's coming up in the future for Jason and Jiu-Jitsu 5-0?
Yeah, man. Well, you can find me pretty much all over the internet. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok. I don't really make any dance videos. It's
Yeah.
all jujitsu
Mhm.
content. I also have a website, jiu-jitsu50.com. It's FIVEO, the letter O.com. So a lot of branded Jiu-Jitsu 5-0 gear and stuff, kind of going back to the lifestyle side of my business. Gis, rash guards, gear bags. I have grappling dummies. There's a lot of different products and stuff that I've come out with. So yeah, pretty much all over the internet. I do have my app. Like I said, it is available in the App Store for iOS and Android. New version coming out really soon. That's also going to have a web component, so you'll be able to access all your content on a laptop, computer, whatever. Different membership plans there. So my goal is really to be a resource for cops. The new app will also have a brand like a BJJ beginner series that we got done shooting not too long ago. That'll take everybody from what is jujitsu all the
Mhm.
way to all the different positions and different techniques and things from each of those positions. Is a pretty comprehensive series, which I think beginners will really appreciate. But yeah, at the end of the day, I want to be a resource. I want to help out any way I can. So the future for me is really getting this, this mobile app up and running, and building the Jiu-Jitsu 5-0 family in terms of like all of our members, and making myself available to them to give them the best training possible that I can from pretty much anywhere that you are. And that at the end of the day, that's kind of my biggest goal with my company. I also do some in-person classes. So if your agency wants to host a class, you can hit me up and we can work through that depending on what it is. We can do custom classes. I have a couple of other courses that are already kind of pre-made, a takedown class, I have a vehicle extraction class. But we can do custom courses as well. And then I do have an agency program for agencies that want more than the 40-hour class. It's basically me becoming your personal use of force coach for the year. I'll fly out, put on a private certification class, and then I build in a bunch of other aspects to that program throughout the year. So we can build in virtual classes with your instructors. I like to do quarterly check-ins via Zoom to see how training and stuff's going. I help write lesson plans, help structure your in-service training. So there's some consulting built in on that too. So a lot more comprehensive than just sending your cops to a class, having them get a paper certificate, and then, the trainer disappears for 2, 3 years until it's time to recertify.
Right. Yeah.
I think that model is, like I said, it's necessary, but that's been the model in the industry for a long time. And my goal is really I wanted to change all of that by doing it better and making training consistent and making cops actually proficient in the things that they're training. So that's what I'm all about. That's what I'm here for. Yeah, if you're looking to train jujitsu, I'd love to talk to you more about it. If you have questions for me, hit me up, send me a DM, send me an email. I try to answer every message that I get. Always happy to connect with cops around the country and help them out in any way I can. So
Yeah, no, thank you. That's great. And you're doing great stuff. And I've always been a real big fan. Jason with Jiu-Jitsu 5-0, great guy, good jiu-jitsu. He's up in it's actually Wisconsin, but you're really Minneapolis, St. Paul area. You're just over the border in Wisconsin for Alliance.
So yeah, I train at two Alliance gyms. I actually live on the border of Minnesota and Wisconsin currently. So my
Mhm.
main gym is in the Minneapolis area. That's where I started training. So I still go
Okay.
there 2, 3 days a week. And then there's another Alliance gym that's just kind of across the river from me. I train there probably once a week, once every couple weeks. And the guy who runs that is a 4-time judo Olympian.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, also a jujitsu black belt. So I try to take as much away from him as I can. And I'm always asking questions about different takedowns and
Sure.
stand and all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. So,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
One
I'm
of the
very
hardest things to
fortunate.
do, yeah, is
Yep.
to get a
Yep.
good takedown. Yeah.
I'm blessed. I'm very blessed and fortunate to be able to train under the people that I train with up here in Minnesota and Wisconsin, and my training partners. I mean, a room full of killers every time you go to class. Like, there's no easy roles. So
Yeah.
they've all made me a much better grappler and a better version of myself. So I'm very appreciative of the fact that I kind of found those gyms and I have the ability to train there.
Sure. No, yeah. And you're doing great stuff, and you know, it's good to see, police officers, carrying the message of jiu-jitsu. It's happening all over the country. From the East Coast to the West Coast, it's really taken off in all different aspects. And I
Yeah,
don't think we all have to compete against each other. There's, plenty of stuff for all of us to do. And that's what
absolutely.
I'm really trying to do, is kind of connect with, people in the industry, through this podcast. I talked to Heather Glolich, a couple of weeks ago, and she just got her blue belt.
Yeah, I saw
And
that. I
just,
met
yeah,
her in Nashville
yeah.
at the street cop training conference.
Oh,
Wow,
okay.
that last year, a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
So just kind of, just trying to branch out and just, talk to different people in the industry about just law enforcement, jiu-jitsu, and all the things that kind of go along with it. And, I hope, I kind of hope this podcast takes off. And I've been talking with BJJ Cops. He's coming out to do, a Saturday seminar just to kind of try and get, some introduction to, police officers like that are scared to take class. Like, hey, take this quick seminar. It's on a Saturday afternoon,
Yeah. Yep.
So
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunities out there, a lot of great training companies from, high level jiu-jitsu black
sure.
belt, experienced cops. So I would say like if you're looking to try a class or if your department is looking to send you to a class and there's something available that's in your area or they're willing to pay to like have you travel a little bit, like go do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Seek out those companies that are putting on
Yeah,
those classes. I'd like to think that mine is one of those reputable companies that puts out good stuff, but
absolutely. Yeah.
doesn't have to be Jiu-Jitsu 5-0. There's a lot of other companies out there that are doing it. And to your point, we don't have to compete with each other. I think when people are teaching good jiu-jitsu to cops, everybody wins. The
Yeah,
cop wins,
absolutely. Yeah.
society wins, your
Yeah,
company wins, and there's plenty of it for everybody. At the
absolutely.
end of the day, we want everyone to start training.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, that's really the goal. And whether you're on the East Coast, there's tons of gyms out there, tons of good people doing good stuff, to the West Coast. And I know you were just on the West Coast too were you out there with OTX Tactics?
Yeah, my good friend Ashley runs OTX Tactics, so we did
Yes,
out at
yes.
the 10th Planet out there. It was awesome. Really had a good time. I love San Diego. Any chance I can get back there, I try to make an excuse to do it. So
Hmm.
I'm
Yeah,
sure we'll do another one together at some point. But
yeah,
yeah, Ashley's great. Definitely go follow her in OTX Tactics. She's a jiu-jitsu brown belt, former pro MMA fighter. Like
yeah, she knows her stuff. Yeah,
she's awesome.
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
she's great.
Yeah. And yeah, so it's great to see. And then, all the all the Gracie gyms out of San Diego and all the West Coast stuff out there. So there's plenty of good, solid jiu-jitsu all over the country for police
For sure.
officers to get involved with. And
Yep.
so I'm just trying to branch out and kind of talk to
There's
different people in the industry and what they're doing, and where the
Yep,
industry's going. And I think you're one of the kind of pioneers in the industry. You're doing great stuff at Jiu-Jitsu 5-0. I'm a big fan,
appreciate it.
and I appreciate you coming to talk on my small little podcast, the Man of the Law podcast. And I wish you all the best in your future stuff. I really do.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I appreciate you having me on. This was fun.
Yeah, no, much appreciated. So any
Cool.
last stuff you want to put out? Anything you want to say?
No, other than
Yeah.
if you are a cop, go train jujitsu. That's it. Go try a class and don't look back.
Yeah, absolutely. Much agreed.